Today, regulators hit popular trading app Robinhood with a record fine. What did it do wrong and how much does it have to pay? The housing market is still red hot. Some are paying $1 million over asking price just to win the bidding war. What does this mean for the market looking forward? At a trade show promoting products made in America, we talked to the organizer and asked him where the opportunities for American manufacturers are right now. That and much more coming up at NTD Business. Good evening. Great to have you with us. I'm Paul Graney. Regulators just hit stock trading app Robinhood with its largest ever fine, $70 million. It's accused of neglecting its duty to supervise trades and misleading investors with inaccurate information. It's after large-scale system outages back in March of 2020. As part of the fine, Robinhood must give more than $12.5 million back to customers. In a statement, it said it is working on improving the platform's stability and some other issues. And shares of Chinese ride-hailing app Didi soared nearly 19% in their New York Stock Exchange debut today. It's the biggest U.S. listing by a Chinese company in 7 years. Didi's stock opened over $2.50 more than the initial public offering price. It's valued at $80 billion. Didi's backed by Alibaba, Tencent, and Uber. It was founded 9 years ago as a taxi-hailing app, and it bought Uber's China business in 2016. Now it dominates the ride-sharing business in China. This filing with the Securities and Exchange Commission shows the Chinese regime's state-owned companies played an important role in its monopoly. It was once seen as a state-owned enterprise, but it also says the regime's recent crackdown of big tech companies poses a risk. It could be fined there. And on Wall Street, major indexes were pretty mixed today. The S&P 500, though, did post its fifth straight record closing high. Gained 6 points, or just over 0.1%. The Dow rose 210 points, or 0.6%. The Nasdaq, though, lost 24 points, less than 0.2%. All three indexes, though, posting their fifth consecutive quarterly gains. And house prices are up 14.6% from last year's, the biggest gain in over 30 years, bigger than any time during the housing boom that sparked the global financial crisis. So if you're considering buying a home, be prepared to fight. Some buyers are bidding up to $1 million over the asking price. NTD's Evelyn Lee reports.
Buying a house has never been this expensive, and house availability has rarely been this low. Buyers are so competitive, some are even offering sellers Caribbean vacations or will pay the competing bidder a couple $100,000 to walk away.
And these are things that don't normally happen, and it probably shouldn't be happening in a normal functioning market.
John Walkup, the co-founder of Urban Dig, says there are far more buyers than sellers right now, which forces them to compete. Christina Morales is a realtor at Morales Team Real Estate. She says she sold her home in just 2 days, and that's despite soaring home prices.
In 2 days, I had 55 showings. I had over 10 offers, and I sold my home well over ask, and that was with a cash buyer. So in this environment, cash buyers are not even getting homes at a discount.
A key national home price index has skyrocketed. It's up almost 15% in April, the largest annual gain in more than 30 years. Above that, the vacancy rate for homes for sale have hit the lowest point. So could these be warning signs for a crash?
I don't think there's going to be a crash. I do think it will cool down.
Morales says she expects the market to neutralize a bit. John Walkup has similar expectations and says we will find equilibrium instead of a crash.
If that demand slows down because prices are up, that might bring some more sellers on, which of course, increases supply, which brings the buyers back.
Experts don't believe the market will slow down until mortgage rates significantly increase. Mortgage rates are lower than they've been in years. But Morales says the market is less vulnerable now than before, with tightened regulations that came after the housing bubble in 2008. Evelyn Lee, NTD News.
And high demand for flights over the Independence Day weekend is forcing Southwest Airlines to give staff double time for working extra shifts. Needs more hands on deck. Staff are also apparently a little upset about recent cancellations and disruptions, so the airline is trying to win them over with extra pay. Some attendants will pick up extra shifts between July 1st and July 8th. Spokesman said ground operations agents and cargo agents will also get double pay for extra shifts that week. An 114-year-old amusement park in California is short on staff too, just as it reopens after lockdown. There are usually twice as many people working there, but competition between businesses for seasonal workers is intense this year. Jillian Kitchener reports.
Thrill seekers are showing up once again to the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk. Since reopening in April after a year-long shutdown, business here has been busy, and this July 4th weekend looks set to bring the biggest crowds yet. But the 114-year-old amusement park, a couple hours south of San Francisco, is operating with only about 1,000 employees, about half what's usual for the summer season. Boardwalk President Carl Rice.
So from a staffing perspective, we'll be as ready as we're going to be. We're not staffed to the level that we would like.
To make sure all rides can stay open, it's all hands on deck. Executives have stepped up and are now working at some attractions or food stands. Rice, whose family owns the park, is himself taking on 2 8-hour shifts a week.
Like I said, I think we're going to be chasing labor or struggling to find enough labor for the remainder of the summer.
As the country approaches the Independence Day celebrations that the Biden administration hoped could mark the country's emergence from the health crisis, the U.S. economy is both back to normal and very far from being so. Data shows the leisure and hospitality industry is still missing 15% of its jobs. Though there are several million more unemployed Americans than before the health crisis, U.S. businesses as a whole report a record number of job openings which need to be filled. At the boardwalk, the shutdown and lack of much advance notice about the reopening meant that seasonal hiring this year started months later than usual. When it did, competition for workers was stiff, with all local businesses ramping up at once. As Rice expands his own workload, he's finding some unexpected benefits.
I have to say, at the end of a shift, I feel like I've contributed, and I feel proud about the hard work I put in that day. And two, I'm really eager and excited to sit down because my aching back and feet are tired and telling me that they are tired. So there's no shame in putting your feet up after a hard day's work.
And hundreds of U.S. manufacturers will gather in Kentucky this fall to showcase their Made in America products. The organization hosting the event, MadeInAmerica.com, says 97% of our clothing, 99% of our electronics, and 80% of our pharmaceutical ingredients are no longer made in the U.S. That poses a huge risk if the suppliers decided to cut us off. But it says many consumers aren't aware of this, and they want to educate people about the importance of supporting American-made products. The event is going to be held at the Kentucky International Convention Center from October 1st through the 3rd. I talked to the event's organizer, Don Buckner. I asked him, with the pandemic, supply chain disruptions, and public dissatisfaction with the Chinese Communist Party at all-time highs, is now a good opportunity for American manufacturers, and is that opportunity being realized?
We're seeing about 3 to 5% reshoring taking place right now, which is actually pretty significant when you consider that there's $6.3 billion per day of imports that are currently coming in. And mostly in the textile industry is the trend, and so is the electronic side, and we're also seeing it in the pharmaceuticals. The pharmaceuticals especially with COVID. COVID's kind of put an exclamation point on the idea of how dependent we are on other countries.
What are some of the other challenges facing American manufacturers that are holding them back from competing with these other countries?
So manufacturers have quite a few hurdles that they have to overcome in order to compete, at least price-wise, with the imported products. Of course, we have a higher wages than the rest of the world. We have higher regulations than the rest of the world. We have higher taxes in many cases. So the manufacturers have to overcome all those things in order to compete. And that's what the tariffs were in place that were prior to September of 2000, before we had permanent most favored trade status implemented for multiple nations, which did away with those tariffs. Those tariffs are what leveled the playing field for U.S. manufacturers for over 100 years.
So you support the tariffs. You don't feel like a lot of the free market people talk about the tariffs. They don't really benefit manufacturers in the long run, et cetera. You feel for American manufacturers and Americans in general, these are a good thing.
So we've been told that free trade is a good thing. When we started free trade in 2000, it's only been 21 years, right? So when we started this free trade trend, how has that benefited? We have some history now. How has that benefited U.S. manufacturers? Well, it's actually decimated them. The pitch that we heard obviously was that we will generate more business, generate more exports. That hasn't worked out. So what the case is that we have to figure out how to reinstate. It's not new tariffs. These are reinstating some of those tariffs, which actually leveled the playing field for U.S. manufacturers to be able to compete on a world market, at least here domestically. What happened in September of 2000, when we gave permanent most favored trade status to certain countries, it allowed those multinational companies to move offshore, take advantage of lower wage labor, less, if any, regulations, and of course lower taxes as well. And then they were given unfettered access to the most powerful economic engine on the planet, which is the U.S. consumer base. And they've extracted capital and wealth from that U.S. consumer base, and it's left this country. So you can look at our debt, you can look at how our job situation scenario. We have been pillaged, really, by a lot of the multinational companies.
Don Buckner, MadeInAmerica.com. And President Biden is expected to sign an executive order seeking to restrain oligopolies. That's a few big businesses that dominate one industry. Some say the meatpacking industry is a prime example. NTD's Colin Fredrickson explains.
With President Biden weighing an executive order to clamp down on industries controlled by just a few number of companies, we take a look at the meatpacking industry. It handles the slaughtering, processing, packaging, and distribution of meat. Currently, the big four meat packers are Tyson Foods, JBS, National Beef, and Cargill.
4 companies account for 85% of fed cattle slaughter, with fewer companies and more foreign-owned companies controlling more of the marketplace. There is a widening gap.
Cattle producer Justin Tupper says there's a crisis in rural America. We're losing producers at an alarming rate while big meat packers make record profits. He gives 2 solutions.
We can either work to eliminate the occurrence of anti-competitive practices and market manipulation in the meatpacking sector, or as we've seen done in the past in other industries, we can break them up so they cannot have as much influence or ownership in the market.
One market analyst says we should look at the root causes of this problem, suggesting a high barrier to entry is a big one. They don't just make it hard for a company to launch, but also to operate and grow.
Setting up a different regulatory climate in which companies can provide new solutions with lower entry barriers in the market.
Biden wants to strengthen oversight of industries controlled by a few big businesses with the aim of creating more competition. The order may come next week. Colin Fredrickson, NTD News.
In terms of pollution, how does your electric vehicle compare to a gas-powered car over its lifetime? NTD's Patrick Hayden has how far you may need to drive before the environment sees the benefit.
Imagine you're driving out of the Tesla showroom with a new electric car, satisfied you're helping the planet. But keep going, you'll have to drive over 13,000 more miles before you're doing less harm than a gas-powered car. That's according to a Reuters study that analysed the model used by government agencies to create policy.
There is no such thing as a pure green energy technology, period, full stop.
Reuters analysed data on the lifetime emissions of vehicles. It looked at a model using thousands of parameters, including the metals used in EV batteries. One expert says whether you're mining for coal or elements for batteries, there is going to be an environmental impact and environmental opposition.
We have right now a lawsuit in Nevada challenging the first new large mine to produce the minerals that go into these batteries, and the environmental community is split.
He says that even if EVs are not 100% more efficient than fossil fuels, there is still good reason to make the transition.
You look at the emissions from combustion, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, fine particulates, volatile organic compounds. These things are proven killers of human beings.
The model the Reuters study was based on also took into consideration how power is generated in different countries. For example, 23% of energy in the US comes from coal, and that goes into charging electric vehicles. And China relies on coal even more. You'd have to drive your electric car 80,000 miles there to break even. That's about half an EV's lifespan of expected usage. Conversely, in Norway, which relies mostly on hydropower, you'd only have to drive 8,500 miles to break even. A similar study in Poland showed that at best, an EV's break-even point is about 3 times higher than the model Reuters used. Patrick Hayden, NTD News.
A bipartisan group of lawmakers are trying to boost public investment in biofuels. That's a low-carbon alternative to electric vehicles. One of the bipartisan bills seeks $1 billion in grants for pumps and storage tanks for gasoline with a higher blend of biofuel. The second bill calls for a $200 per car tax credit for automakers who can make flex fuel vehicles that can run on nearly any blend of gasoline and ethanol. That's a popular biofuel made from corn. The third bill would give fuel blenders and retailers like gas stations a tax credit for every gallon of fuel sold that has 15% or more ethanol. And federal regulators want stricter reporting on crashes involving automated driving systems. Spotlights on Tesla after a string of accidents. NTD's Patrick Hayden has the story.
Federal regulators in the U.S. are increasing oversight of driver-assisted crashes. Concerns have been growing over vehicles such as Teslas that have these functions. On Tuesday, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, or NHTSA, ordered that all crashes involving these systems must be reported within a day, and manufacturers and operators will have to issue broader monthly safety reports. The NHTSA says gathering data will help instill public confidence that safety is being overseen. It's already investigating 36 driver-assist crashes, 30 of which involved Tesla. The agency will be tracking patterns in data from lane-keeping assistance, cruise control systems, and other high-tech features. Tesla says these functions should always be used by an attentive driver at the wheel. Tesla did not respond to NTD for comment. The NHTSA's purview will also cover fully autonomous vehicles, like ones being developed by Google. Autonomous ride-hailing services are also included. Patrick Hayden, NTD News.
And airlines are worried about Europe's vaccine passport plan. They say countries need to work better together. It launches tomorrow. NTD's Colin Fredrickson reports.
The EU system of digital CCP virus travel certificates comes into force on Thursday. It's meant to enable travel for people who can show they are fully vaccinated, have recently recovered from the virus, or have had a negative test. Passengers will be able to show a QR code to prove their status. But in a letter to EU leaders, airlines and airports have warned that the system could cause chaos. They say the system is too fragmented, with different practices in different countries. The industry says vaccination certificates and other forms must be processed before travelers arrive at airports, or there will be huge delays. They want governments, not airports, to manage all the data and provide equipment for reading the codes. Air travel organization IATA says the time it takes to get through an airport during a journey has already doubled to 3 hours. It warns that could rise to 5 or even 8 hours without changes to current procedures. European Commission guidance on the new scheme echoes some of the concerns. Brussels has warned that 10 different combinations of checks were being planned by different countries. Airports say any resulting chaos will just further undermine confidence in air travel. Colin Fredrickson, NTD News.
Still to come. Good news for diabetics. Walmart will soon start selling cheaper insulin as it seeks to drive growth at its healthcare business. And a Russian couple builds a Treehouse hotel getaway. It's the second one they've built. It comes complete with a terrace and a dining area. That and more after the short break. Welcome back. Walmart is launching its own brand of insulin for diabetes patients. It includes analog insulin vials and flex pens for administering the doses. The vials will cost $72. The flex pens will cost around $85. Walmart says that's up to 75% cheaper than other brands. The Rely On products will be available this week at Walmart pharmacies, and they launch in Sam's Club pharmacies next month. And Hallmark is making sending cards easier. It's allowing people to make cards for family and friends by phone. Company announced sign and send technology where people can create their own cards complete with handwritten messages. Users choose a Hallmark card and then upload a photo of a personal message. Hallmark then takes the personal message, puts it together a physical card, stamps it, and sends it to the recipient at no additional charge. Hallmark officials say this will allow people to put more care into the world. And a Russian couple have created a unique hotel complex with all the comforts of a traditional guest house, but it's suspended between the birch trees. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the story on how their Treehouse hotel came to be.
These are the Lopakino Gnezdo tree houses. Unlike a child's tree house, these constructions need some heavy-duty support to stay upright. Sturdy yellow pillars have been added to the existing birch trees to hold the buildings aloft. Up the stairs, there's a comfortable retreat waiting for guests. From the outdoor sun terrace to the interior with dining and seating areas, Victoria Zykov and her husband Stanislav have created a chic yet woodsy atmosphere.
All the home interior is made of wood, without any heavy elements. We have the minimum of metal structures. For instance, there is a dining room. The wood we use for a table are old boards we found in a barn. We dug them up from there with my husband this winter, dried, polished, cleaned them.
The couple have built 2 tree houses so far, and they have plans to construct a third. But the next one will have an important difference in design. It will be wheelchair accessible.
The entrance of the house will have a ramp with a total length of 83 meters. The ramp will have a gradient of 6 degrees, which will allow people with disabilities, wheelchair users, to rest in the house. The design did not come out of nowhere. My mother has been in a wheelchair for 20 years, and I know there is an issue of having accessible environments.
Stanislav and Victoria initially built the treetop guest house for visiting friends to use. But they realized the structures presented a business opportunity and now rent them out via Airbnb. They say they've welcomed 160 tourists.
First, young people come to spend romantic evenings, families with children. When we talk to them, they tell us children adore living in trees. We have guests from Moscow mostly, but we have guests also from other cities.
The name Lopakino Gnezdo comes from a play on words on the name of a decorative castle in Crimea called Swallow's Nest. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
As the latest business updates for today, you can still catch NTD Evening News with Stephanie Cox at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. For NTD Business, that's all for today. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.